Okay, please sign in.
Five members present.
Okay, Ryan, have there been any changes to the agenda?
No changes, Your Honor.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve the agenda as distributed?
So move.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, please vote.
5 yes.
Okay, item 2, Citizens Forum. Now is the time for anybody that would like to address the city council on any items that are not a part of either public hearings or new business. Please come to the podium and give us your name and address, and I would ask a couple things. Number one, that you keep it civil and respectful with whatever you have to say, and number two, that you limit your comments to 5 minutes or less. At this time, anybody in the audience that would like to address the council, I will take anybody here first before going online. Okay. Seeing no one, is there anybody online that would like to address the city council under Citizens Forum? If so, please hit *6, not #6, but *6 to unmute yourself and give us your name and address for the record. Okay, hearing no one, we will move on to item 3, Mayor, Council, Manager Report, Other Entities Update, and we will start with Councilman Lotz.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to report this morning we had a great building and planning meeting. It reminded me that sometimes the decisions we have to make as council members are difficult and they're not going to make everybody happy. But I think we're making progress on a lot of different fronts, and some of the agenda items are also maybe tonight as well. And so excited to get these underway and excited to move our city forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Councilman Lotz. Moving on to Councilman Trevelyan. Any report?
Nothing this time, Your Honor.
Okay, thank you. Councilwoman Hardman?
Yes, thank you. Busy week since the last time we've gathered. Had a very good Human Rights Commission meeting, and really appreciate the involvement of one of our staff members, Audrey Kinnis, on those meetings. And she also is sharing updates on the work that she's doing in diversity, equity, inclusion. There is a survey that I think was sent to most of the staff regarding some training, upcoming training and assessments of how everyone is doing in this space. I think when we were at Finance Committee meeting, I suggested that we all participate. I'm proudly participated in the survey. I would imagine that many of you have as well. But I think it's a good exercise for us all to go through as leaders of the city so that we can all be a part of an organizational assessment of where we are on the diversity, equity, and inclusion journey. So hope that all my peers have participated in that survey process. We attended a West Des Moines Clive Chamber meeting, always robust there. Can't keep up with Catherine with the 1 or 2 activities and events that she has a week. But one that I will plug is the Black and Brown Business Summit pitch competition. It's due on March the 5th and at 5 o'clock, and it's an opportunity to win part of $40,000. So for those businesses that feel like they've got a pitch to make, it's a competitive process, fun process. I'd encourage you to go to the website and look that up. March 1st is the deadline. Valley Junction Master Plan Committee meeting. I've attended almost every one of those meetings from beginning to the end. Had one other since the last time we've gotten together. Some of the work of that committee will be before us tonight. I even attended the planning and zoning meeting just to see how that process was going. I did not speak, but that is where some of the work went in terms of the Valley Junction Master Plan. So wanted to listen to any kind of discussion or debate with regard to that. And I think that those guidelines were approved by everyone on planning and zoning with one abstention. That was Scott Hatfield.
If you could hold on 1 second, Councilwoman. Are we having difficulty at all with the audio? I'm getting from Christine Gordon that she's not hearing any sound coming out of the microphones.
Yeah, I forwarded that to the IT guys in the booth. They're the ones who need to fix it. So
Do we want
as long as they're aware.
to pause a second and see if they can fix that? I mean, and I feel bad because we took Citizens Forum and nobody responded, and I guess now we know why.
Yeah, I'm looking to those guys for,
Let's just be at ease, let's just be at ease a few minutes and see if we can resolve this, and then we will continue. So, sorry, Councilwoman, just hold on real quick. What'd you say?
Sing something?
Yeah. You want to do what? What do you want to say? Do you want to start your report all over again?
I don't have
Here, but
to.
nobody
I can
online.
just pick up where I
Sorry.
lost in interest of time. No, that's fine. We need to make sure that people hear,
Doug, you
so
wanna make your comments
maybe,
over again,
maybe they
or
haven't heard.
you good with? I'm good. Still cannot hear sound. Might have been a delayed response. Audrey, can you hear us now? Technology, it's great when it works.
Yeah, fortunately, it's the first time
Yeah,
throughout the last year and a half.
and we have a lot of those firsts with me in the seat, so.
Another memory, Mr. Mayor.
They're restarting some things,
Restarting it? Okay, thanks, Joe.
so it should just be a minute.
Okay, not a
Sure.
problem.
So a reboot, is that what you're telling me?
Reboot, that's the number one answer to all the computer problems.
Yeah, I just
What are you
maxed
pulling?
out.
Are you pulling anything?
Hush.
because I, yeah, there's usually one up there, but I usually don't know how it works. I don't usually mess with it.
Oh, yes, yes, sorry. C-tap, C-tap. C10. G.
Page 2.
I don't know. I3. Okay. You pulling anything? Kevin, you pulling anything at all? Okay. Doug, you planning on pulling anything? Okay. I'll still go to your basket of reports.
Great. Thank you. It's close.
Rebooting now.
Just imagine a circle on your screen.
Going round and round.
Netflix.
This is where my kids complain, Dad, I'm lagging. I'm gonna get killed. Oh. I'm gonna go back to you, Renee, if you want to start over. It's up to you.
Okay.
And you know what, I'm gonna back up real quick to Citizens Forum, see if anybody online.
That was just a memo, right?
Yeah. It was there.
Quit buying 5A maybe? Because a lot of times they can get stuck.
To go with kids on a spring break / college, spring break college trip.
Doesn't look like it.
Okay, we're going to try this again. Can people that are online, somebody let us know if you can hear the audio at this point? And if you don't let us know, I'm assuming you can't hear. Joe, can you hear us? Christine says she doesn't hear anything. Testing, testing. Anybody here? Yeah.
This is Mitchell Callahan. I don't know if you can hear me, but I cannot hear over the phone.
Yeah.
That's, they can hear internally. Can they hear
Okay.
us?
Mitchell, can you hear us right now?
See, I think they can hear each other online, but they
Yeah,
can't hear us.
they just can't hear the audio coming from here.
Hi,
Paul?
Mitch. If you can hear me, this is Erin with Tesca. They are working on a few technical aspects and awaiting the good word.
Yeah, so the reason I can tell where you guys are at is because I'm also on the YouTube live stream. So I don't know how many other people are on the call, but that's how I came to.
You need some more keys
Yeah,
there, Greg.
no, thanks for that update. I just received word from the city that they're working to try and fix it. But to everyone else on the line, thanks for holding on.
Joe says it's coming through. Joe, you can hear us talking on the dais?
All right, sounds good. Yeah, I can. I'll
There's no
stay
way.
on YouTube and Teams, and I guess let you know if I do hear audio come in through the phone.
Sounds good. Thanks, Mitch.
Yep.
Well, I mean, we give the public, an ability to join us online and weigh in, and we can't get. Joe, can you hear us or no?
Testing.
Is there a way to reboot the system one more time?
Yeah. The issue
What do you
is
want?
that we're able to hear people on Teams, but for some reason the microphones aren't coming through Teams. So they're still looking at that. No, unfortunately not.
Is there a way to let people know they can call in? Is there a call-in option? Is there?
Mitch was on, he said he was on the phone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. He was watching YouTube.
Yeah, and if they can listen to the YouTube, they can still hear where we're at in the meeting and then participate. They can call in and speak on the phone. They just have to have YouTube and the phone going.
Is there a way we can let people know that out there so they know that?
You can type into Teams a message, right? And then anybody on Teams can see that?
If people dialed in via phone, they would be voice only, so I don't think we could let the people on the phone know, but we could call them.
Okay.
Somebody, Joe,
I am.
And let them know they've got to go to the YouTube channel. They can call in. If you can do that, we'll give you just a couple minutes and then we're going to restart. We got to get.
Yeah, sorry about that. Thank you.
Yeah, it's okay.
Russ, is it possible to have somebody call on the cell phone and then just do it that way, or, I don't know, that's what somebody asked, so.
Yeah, right. Call on their cell phone into the system.
No, they're saying us call, and then we use from the mic into that.
That's not probably going to be a good way to
Own
get
it?
good
Okay.
audio.
We have a little remote speaker that Linda just went to get that
Oh.
we put it on the dais. It's pretty good about picking up
Okay.
sound, so we can try that.
Yeah, if that works, if it interfaces with Teams, I mean. Sorry, guys.
This is the first major problem we've had in 2 years almost of doing this, so
I hate to tell you, I'm that guy.
I knew it, Mayor.
I'm I've never seen this before, guys.
Bound to happen.
When it comes to furnaces and geothermal units and barbecue cars and hot tubs.
Obviously, people in the audience and they'd like to be in your world.
I can both hit the Powerball and get struck by lightning in the same day.
Alana would be sad.
She would be very happy.
I didn't say happy. I said she'd be set.
Oh, Lordy.
Are we, I mean, is it a legal requirement in terms of participation if it's noticed
It's
that way?
just somebody might, since we offer this and somebody's not able to get in, they might say they were robbed of their ability to speak to the council. And I don't know.
How do we do it before Teams? Was it just?
It was in person.
In person only.
No
And
phone.
If one of us was absent, we would join via phone, and the phone sat down there by Ryan and Julius, and then you, two people talk at the same time, and you couldn't hear. And it was terrible.
I'd like to think that at the end, if somebody finally did get in, we would give them the opportunity, even if it was at the end of the meeting, to do so.
I
as
think
to
we'll
not
plug into Ryan's and set this in as close to the middle as we can.
Probably
Plug into my what?
a couple minutes.
Computer them.
I'm not on Teams on
That
this.
option later.
Yeah, move on and then do.
So the one that is on Teams is the one up here.
Someone to speak,
We can hook up to this computer.
but here, yeah.
But this one, I don't know. This is,
Sorry about that.
I don't know if that's gonna work. That, IT would have to,
I mean, could we plug it into some of the plugs that we have here? Well, I guess a lot of them are taken out.
kind of,
Yeah, that's what I thought, go back to, either that or come back to it at the end.
If someone did want to speak online on the phone right now, they could do that. We could hear them, right?
Right.
So they do have the opportunity to speak right now.
We just can't monitor.
I'm not on Teams
We just need
We just
something
can't-
that's connected.
They can hear us.
That one is.
Okay.
So if we can hook it up there.
He says he can say that's all.
But then on the teams, if they're called in, wait, anyway. Call in, Teams, or something.
Perfect, that will pick up. So we're,
We're gonna try it.
all right, so we're gonna be on constantly, right? There's no pushing on or off.
Right.
Okay.
Well, you're still gonna have to for internally.
Right,
That's
you
just
can
for
go
the
internally,
team
but
stuff.
that will be
Yeah.
on, so.
Yeah.
It will be on and pick up everything.
Can anybody hear us now?
It is on YouTube.
You can hear it on YouTube?
Yep, you can hear it on YouTube.
So you can hear what we're saying right now on
Yep,
YouTube.
and I'm on the historicwdm.com website, and it says click here to access a live stream of the city council meeting going on right now. And I can see beautiful Renee's face, yeah.
Perfect.
Yep, and I can hear everything. And I just
Okay.
heard my voice, it's weird, it's freaking me out.
Okay, all right, all right.
There's a delay.
Well, should we continue?
And that's on YouTube?
Yeah.
That's YouTube.
But if they're, they can also live stream it from our website, right?
it's the YouTube.
It's the same thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
From our website.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, all right. We're going to call the meeting back to order. I apologize. Thank you, everybody, for hanging in there while we're dealing with technical difficulties. Hopefully, everybody can hear us now. at least on YouTube. And if you are on Teams, we can still hear you if you want to call in and unmute yourself and make comments. I'm going to really quickly just go back to item 2, Citizens Forum. For anybody online that would like to address the council on any item that is not part of new business or public hearings. So if there's anybody online right now that would like to address the council on anything, please hit star and 6 to unmute yourself. Okay. Hearing no one, when we left off, we were having item 3, Mayor, Council, Manager reports, other entity updates, and I will start off with Councilwoman Hardman.
Thank you. In interest of time, I won't repeat what I've already, in interest of time, I won't repeat what I've already said. So I will indicate also, in addition to the West Des Moines Clive Chamber and Valley Junction Master Plan and Human Rights Commission, Planning and Zoning, I did attend the West Des Moines Police Department community reception, and it was a blast. They hosted the community to review some community relations videos that they're going to be using, one for recruitment purposes and one for telling the story about the life of a police officer and what they do on a day-to-day basis. So there was a consultant that they worked with to put together these videos and did a very nice job. And there was a public reception to unveil them and to share them and to just celebrate, actually. So thank you, Chief Scott, for your work behind all that happened there. And then also, as Councilman Lotz indicated, we had a very robust Planning and Development Committee meeting. And as he has shared, you know, that is a meeting that deals with lots of kinds of things. You know, trying to balance what's good for West Des Moines versus the interests of citizens. The big topic of that meeting, and everything's public, was Sweet Shots development and where it's going, and should it go there, and should there be a comp plan amendment, of which there have been over 100 or so amendments to the comp plan thus date. So engaged in a discussion to have that come to the full council for review and vote. So busy 2 weeks, but really have enjoyed much of what I've been engaged in. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Renee. Okay. Councilman McKinney.
Thank you. Just briefly, we had a Icon Water Trails meeting last week, and they're moving forward with some activities related to on-water improvements near Fleur. And I understand that there's some ongoing conversations with the City of West Des Moines relative to some collaborations there. So I think some good things that will complement what's happening with the boathouse and the investment the city's already made in those sort of quality of life amenities. And then last, I just want to give a shout out to the Chamber and your annual dinner. I think it was last week, or maybe it was a week before. They kind of put together, but great event, really good turnout, and thank you for all you're doing. So that's all, Mayor.
Thank you, Councilman McKinney. Councilman Hudson.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a couple of quick remarks. Yes, Chief Scott, that was a fantastic event at the Recplex, so I want to thank you and your entire team. It was a pleasure to be there with Councilwoman Hardman. I forgot to mention last time, this is my first time on the Parks and Rec Board. We had a meeting back in January, and it's really, the beginning of the year is a really nice time to see all the cool stuff that happened over the year, and just some statistics that 90,000 have used our aquatic centers in the year 2021. The Recplex, we don't have the numbers, all of them yet, but just tens of thousands. I know all of us have been there quite a few times. 6,000 baseball and softball games in West Des Moines, 14,000 have gone to the amphitheater for an event, and at the boathouse, 7,000 boathouse rentals. it's just, those are the kind of things that Parks and Rec are doing. I definitely wanted to share those statistics. And there are many more, but in the interest of time, really excited to be on the board for this year. As for F&A, we met on February 9th. We wanted to tighten up some guidelines with the Regulatory Compliance Fund and the Property Improvement Fund, as well as upper story housing programs. One, we wanted to add roofing as an option when it comes to an opportunity for city funding, because down in our historic areas, roofs there's probably a need in many buildings for that. So we wanted to add that to the protocols, and of course, any sort of application for city funding will be consistent with the new guidelines. And of course, stabilizing existing properties will be a priority when it comes to those things. So that's what we talked about at F&A, and that concludes my report, Your Honor.
Thank you, Councilman Hudson. Mr. City Manager, Tom Haddon.
No report, Your Honor.
Short and sweet. Thank you very much. The only thing that I would have is I just want to give a shout out to two Miami of Ohio students, Grace and Holly Hayden, who are watching the council meeting here for a government class in their school. So welcome to the meeting. I also want to welcome one of our city attorneys, Greta Truman, to the dais. It's good to have you here. So, and with that, I will move on to item 4, consent agenda. Are there any items that any council person would like to pull from the consent agenda?
Yep. 4C10, 4G, 4H2, and 4I3.
Okay, can I get a motion on the remainder?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, please vote.
Five yes.
Item 4C10, West Grand Golf, Inc., doing business as West Grand, 6450 Raccoon River Drive. Class BW permit with Sunday sales and outdoor service privileges. It's a renewal of the liquor license.
Just a potential conflict of interest, Mayor.
Okay, is there somebody like to move this item?
So moved.
Okay, so
Second.
moved. Okay, any discussion? Okay, please vote.
4 yes, 1 abstention due to potential conflict of interest.
Okay, item 4G, motion approving change order number 2, West Des Moines Digital Enterprise Conduit Deployment Segment 4, Phase 1. Matt?
Yep, thank you. As I've done throughout the last year and a half relative to the fiber project, I'm going to abstain for a potential conflict, and I'm not going to repeat it for the next one or several of them that are on the new business one, but just for the benefit of everybody, that's why I'm abstaining.
Okay, thank you. Can I get a motion to approve this item?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, seeing none, please vote.
4 yes, 1 abstention due to potential conflict of interest.
Okay, 4H2, we've got, again, a motion approving amendment number 4 to the professional service agreement, West Des Moines Digital Enterprise Design, based on Matt's potential conflict of interest. Can we get somebody to move this item, please?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, hearing none, please vote.
4 yes, 1 abstention due to potential conflict of interest.
Okay, and item 4I3. 4I3 is order and construction, digital enterprise conduit deployment, segment 4, phase 2. I would take a motion on this item.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, hearing none, please vote.
4 yes, 1 abstention due to potential conflict of interest.
Okay, item 5, old business. Sorry, hold on a second here. Amendment to City Code, amend Title 3, Business and Licensing, Chapter 8, Pawnbrokers, to add definitions of dealer and secondhand dealer, and amending licensing procedures. We've got an ordinance for approval of the second reading, waiver of the third reading, and adoption of final form. There are no outstanding issues, and I would note this came through Public Safety December 3rd with unanimous recommendation.
Move consideration of second reading.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Please vote.
5 yes, an ordinance amending the City Code of the City of West Des Moines, Iowa, 2019 by amending Title 3 Business and Licensing, Chapter 8 Pawnbrokers, to add definitions of dealer and secondhand dealer and amending licensing procedures.
Move approval of second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, please vote.
Five yes.
Move waiving the third reading and adopt in final form.
Second.
Okay, please vote.
Renee, I think the button didn't work. Five yes.
Okay. Item 6, public hearings. Item 6A, we're being asked to continue this public hearing at a future meeting to be determined.
Move continuation.
Okay,
Second.
second. Okay, any discussion? Please vote.
Five yes.
Okay, item 6B. This is the time and the place for a public hearing to consider amendment number 1 to the Digital Economic Development Digital Enterprise Urban Renewal Area initiated by the City of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date that the notice was published?
February 11th, 2022 in the Des Moines Register.
Okay, and have we received any written comments to this
None.
hearing?
None, Your Honor.
Okay, and now is the time and place for the audience. Anybody would like to address the City Council on item 6B, please come up to the podium, give us your name and address for the record. Okay, anybody, I will go to anybody online that would like to address the City Council on item 6B. Please hit *6 to unmute yourself and give us your name and address for the record. Okay, hearing none, I will declare the public hearing closed. We've got a resolution for approval of urban renewal plan amendment. And there are no outstanding issues, and this came before Finance Administration on January 19th with unanimous recommendation.
Move for approval of the amendment.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yeah, you know, we've been in this process for a little while, and certainly it is an extensive process, but I was just talking to a resident today, and they just shared their great enthusiasm that there's going to be more opportunity for internet services. So just wanted to continue to share that there is still great enthusiasm, and it takes a little bit, but we're going to get there.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah, and this came up during my town hall meeting on Saturday, and everybody there was happy that this is moving forward, and they're looking forward to it.
Yeah, this will be a great thing, and I hope we get more and more providers that want to come in and use our conduit. And the more providers you have, the more competition, the better the prices you're going to get for the service. So appreciate the comments. All right, any other discussion? Hearing none, please vote if you haven't already.
Four yes, one abstention due to potential conflict of interest.
Okay, item 6C, this is the time and the place for a public hearing to consider parcel 2021-2018, generally located near the intersection of Southeast Army Post Road and Southeast 42nd Street, conveyance of permanent easement of Des Moines Waterworks and conveyance of property interest to SBBP JV21 LLC, initiated by the City of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
February 15th, 2022 in the Des Moines Register.
And have we received any written comments to this hearing?
None, Your Honor.
Okay, anybody from the audience that would like to address the council on item 6C, please come to the podium, give us your name and address. Okay, seeing no one, anybody online that would like to address the council on item 6C, please hit *6 to unmute. Hearing no one, I will declare the public hearing closed. We've got a resolution to approve conveyance of easement. We've got two resolutions which we can take at the same time.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, please vote.
Five yes.
All right. Item 6D. This is the time and place for a public hearing to considering the issuance of not to exceed $17.2 million of general obligation urban renewal bonds initiated by the City of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
February 4th, 2022 in the Des Moines Register.
And have we received any written comments to this hearing?
None, Your Honor.
Okay, anybody from the audience that would like to address City Council on item 6D, please come to the podium and give us your name and address. Okay, seeing no one. Anybody online, please hit *6 to unmute and give us your name and address. Okay, we've now lost the audio, or the video, sorry. Hearing no one, I'm going to declare the public hearing closed. We've got a resolution authorize issuance of not to exceed $17.2 million in general obligation bonds. There are no outstanding issues, and this came through F&A on January 19th with unanimous recommendation. Can I get a motion to approve the resolution?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, please vote.
Five yes.
Okay, item 6E, this is a time and place for a public hearing to consider FY23 proposed maximum property tax dollars initiated by the city of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date that the notice was published?
February 4th, 2022 in the Des Moines Register.
And have we received any written comments to this hearing?
None, Your Honor.
Okay, anybody from the audience who would like to address the council on this item, please come to the microphone, give us your name and address. Okay, anybody online, please hit *6 to unmute yourself and give us your name and address. Okay, hearing no one, I'm going to declare the public hearing closed. And we've got a resolution to adopt the maximum property tax rate for FY23. As the pinky indicates, this is not to establish the actual levy rate, but instead just establish what the maximum rate could be.
Move for approval.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, please vote.
Five yes.
Okay, item 6F, this is the time and place for a public hearing to consider Stagecoach Drive, South Jordan Creek Parkway to South 78th Street, initiated by City of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
February 11th, 2022 in the Des Moines Register.
And have we received any written comment to this hearing?
None, Your Honor.
Okay, anybody from the audience? You know the routine. Come up to the microphone, give us your name and address for the record. Okay, anybody online, please hit *6 to unmute yourself, assuming you're still with us. We apologize for the technical difficulties here. Okay, hearing none, I will declare the public hearing closed. And we have got two resolutions we can take at the same time. There are no outstanding issues, and this came through Public Service unanimously on February 14.
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Just say this area has a lot of opportunity, a lot of activity going on in the super block, and so it's exciting to see this move forward.
Agreed. Okay, please vote.
Five yes.
Okay, item 6G, this is a time and place for a public hearing to consider 2022 street reconstruction program initiated by the City of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date that the notice was published?
February 11th, 2022 in the Des Moines Register.
And have there been any written comments to this hearing?
None, Your Honor.
Okay, anybody from the audience who would like to address the City Council on item 6G, please come up to the podium and give us your name and address. Seeing nobody jumping to it, anybody online, please hit *6 to unmute. Okay, hearing no one, I will declare the public hearing closed. We've got two resolutions that we can take at the same time. This came through, this has no outstanding issues, came through Public Services, February 14th, unanimously.
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, please vote.
Five yes.
Okay, item 6H, this is the time and the place for a public hearing to consider a 2022 playground replacement project initiated by the City of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
February 11th, 2022 in the Des Moines Register.
And has there been any written comment to this hearing?
None, Your Honor.
Okay. Anybody from the audience who would like to address the council on item 6H, please come up to the podium. Okay, seeing no one. Anybody online? *6. Okay, I will declare the public hearing closed. We've got two resolutions and a motion, which again, we can take at the same time. No outstanding issues on this one. It came through Public Services, February 14th.
Move approval.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah,
Okay.
just the fact that these parks are 23 years old, at least the existing play equipment at the parks is 23-year-old. It's time for a new playground there, and I'm sure the kids of West Des Moines will appreciate it.
Yes, kids will be excited for new playground equipment. And so will the parents that park hop like I used to when I had
Oh, you
kids
got to
your
park
age.
hop.
Yeah.
You have to.
It's all the rage.
Yep.
All right, any other discussion? Okay, hearing none, please vote.
Five yes.
Okay, item 6I, this is a time and place for a public hearing to consider 2021 stormwater intake repair program initiated by the city of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
February 11th, 2022 in the Des Moines Register.
And have there been any written comments to this hearing?
None, Your Honor.
Okay, now's the time for the audience. Anybody would like to address the council on item 6I? Okay, seeing no one. Anybody online? Star 6, please. Give us your name and address. Hearing no one, I will declare the public hearing closed. We've got a resolution to adopt specifications, form contract, cost estimates, and file the report of bids. To rebid this when maybe there's more desire for people to bid on this project. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? Okay, please vote.
Five yes.
Now, Ryan, just a quick question. What I've got here says award of the contract, but what do we got in the pinky says that we are to file these and it's going to be rebid?
Yeah, no, that second resolution should have been removed from the agenda, but what you
Okay.
approved was what the staff recommendation in the pinky, so we're okay. It'll be reflected correctly in the
Okay,
minutes.
okay, sounds good, as long as that's correct in the minutes. Okay, item 6J, this is a time and place for a public hearing to consider digital enterprise last mile conduit deployment, segment 1, phase 2, initiated by the city of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
February 11th, 2022 in the Des Moines Register.
Okay, and have we received any written comments to this hearing?
None, Your Honor.
Okay, anybody from the audience who'd like to address the council, please come up to the podium, give us your name and address. Anybody online, please hit star 6 to unmute yourself. Okay, I will declare the public hearing closed. We've got two resolutions in motion, which you can take at the same time. There are no outstanding issues. This came through Public Services, February 14th, with unanimous recommendation.
Move for approval.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, please vote.
Four yes, one abstention due to potential conflict of interest.
Okay, item 6K, we're being asked to continue the public hearing to the March 7th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, hearing none, please vote.
Five yes.
Okay, item 7, new business. Item 7A, Woodland Estates, Plat 1, north of the intersection South 95th Street and Stagecoach Drive. Approve final plat to create 22 lots for single-family development, 1 outlot, and 2 street lots, Silo 9, Plat 1, LLC. We've got a resolution to approve and release the final plat. There are no outstanding issues. The applicant is in agreement with all staff recommendations, and this came through DNP on December 6th unanimously.
Move approval.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Please vote.
Five yes.
Okay, item 7B, Glen Oaks Plat 10, Burr Oaks Drive, approve final plat to create 2 lots for townhome development and 1 lot for single-family development, GOCC Investment LLC. We've got a resolution for acceptance of public improvement and approval and release of final plat. There are no outstanding issues, and I just mentioned this came through DN Development and Planning on August 16th with unanimous recommendation.
Move approval.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay, please vote.
Five yes.
Item 7C, Hy-Vee Convenience Store, 9150 University Avenue, approved preliminary plat and site plan to subdivide the property into 2 lots to allow for the construction of 6,565 square feet convenience store with gasoline pumps and coffee shop with drive-through of Lot 1, Hy-Vee Inc. We have a resolution to approve preliminary plat and the site plan. We've got no outstanding issues, but one condition of approval, which is that the applicant address plan review comments to staff satisfaction before a building permit is issued. This came through both Development and Planning and P&Z with unanimous recommendation.
Move approval.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, this particular project, Mayor, per your comments about the applicant following all of the kind of guidelines, it's really, really important that those guidelines are followed, because I would suggest that this area is very, very busy in the morning. It's a university corridor. First off, a lot of Waukee folks are going to use this a lot. So it's nice to hear they'll be coming into West Des Moines. But it is important, especially for the residents just to the south of there, that they follow the guidelines. So with those stipulations in mind, certainly supportive of this.
Thank you, Greg. Any other comments, questions? Okay, hearing none, please vote.
5 yes.
Okay, item 7D, Historic West Des Moines Design Guidelines generally located between 4th Street to 6th Street and Railroad Avenue to Locust Street. Approval and acceptance of pages 1 through 40, the Historic West Des Moines Design Guidelines pertaining to the Valley Junction Mixed Use District, City of West Des Moines. We've got a resolution for approval and acceptance of pages 1 through 40 of the Historic West Des Moines Design Guidelines pertaining to Valley Junction Historic Use Mixed Use District. There are no outstanding issues. This came through P&Z on February 14th with a vote of 4-0 with 1 abstaining, and that was Commissioner Hatfield, who is also on the committee himself.
Move approval.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, any discussion, including from the audience? Come on up.
I assume you guys are going to approve this, and I pretty much assume you guys assume you're going to approve it too, since it's referenced in stuff that was approved and it's on the agenda. And I'm very excited about that. But what comes next? Because part of any process, I think, is verification that what you got out of the process is the thing that you want. So I would recommend that after you guys approve the design guidelines, that projects continue to go through the steering committee, not in the same capacity that they go through the steering committee now, but as a quick up, down, yes, we like it, no, we don't. So what I'm envisioning here is that projects, as they come through, city staff will compare them against the design guidelines, say, yep, this meets the design guidelines, or no, it doesn't. And in either case, it goes to the steering committee for a quick up, down vote, like not a 2-hour discussion about the color of the siding or anything, but just, yay, we like it, no, we don't, so that we can compare. Because ideally, what will happen is that the design guidelines will say yes, the steering committee will say yes, and we're golden, or design guidelines will say no, the steering committee will say no, and that's also great, right? Because we've either approved the thing we meant to allow, or we've forbidden the thing we meant to allow. But it's those edge cases where the design guidelines might say yes, but the committee says no, or the design guidelines say no, but the committee says yes. That means, okay, there's something here we need to tweak, and that's not a failing of anybody, right? Like Tessa's done a great job, the steering committee has done a great job, but yeah, you want to check, right? Part of any process is checking, and right, like the intent is not to hold up anything, right? So like, if the design guidelines say yes, like it can go to the steering committee in parallel with the other machinations of the city, right? So it doesn't hold anything up.
Yeah.
It's just, you need that little bit of a check.
I appreciate your comments, MJ. I think a couple things. Number one, this committee has met countless hours and has done a lot of work, and they still have some work to do. Number two, this committee was not meant to be a committee that stays in place forever after their work is completed.
Right. And I'm not talking forever, just a little bit.
Yeah, and then the other thing I would say is that, tonight we're approving the design guidelines, and I believe that those also probably need to be codified in some way, so that these aren't just guidelines, these are something that people need to adhere to, and either they check the boxes and they're able to go forward, or they don't, and they don't go forward. So I don't know that, we envisioned a committee process like this, and I'm not sure that it's entirely necessary, to be honest with you. But I do appreciate your comments and the thought that you put into it. That's just from me. I don't know if anybody else would like to comment off of that.
No, I agree that it's not a never-ending committee. And by having the guidelines that the committee has approved and recommended to the planning and zoning and now to us, if something came before, a project comes before the city that doesn't meet the guidelines, it wouldn't be appropriate to send it to the committee for them to decide, well, it doesn't meet the guidelines, but, well, yeah, we do like this. I mean, otherwise, just throw the guidelines out the window.
Right.
So,
Sure.
with that being said, I agree with the mayor that this, I appreciate your comments, but this is not the direction that is intended to go after the guidelines are approved.
No, that's totally fair. Thank you.
Go ahead, Renee, were you going to add something?
Yeah. Thank you so much for your interest in how these guidelines become kind of the lay of the land, so to speak. Otherwise, the work that everyone has been doing for the last 6 or 7 or 8, 9 months is in vain. So I do agree with what has been said here, and that eventually this committee will not, we'll dismiss after we still have some work to be done. But I do think that, as the mayor has said, there is a way and a process to be able to get these guidelines into more of a situation where it becomes part of a code instead of just a guideline. So I think everyone on this committee has the intent to honor these guidelines that you put a lot of work into. But there's probably some further steps that will need to be ensued to truly make sure that things are codified, I guess.
And that being said, too, as I said at the last meeting, we value your feedback and input. And, you've been coming to a lot of council meetings. I see at the Valley Junction meetings on, each month. And so, if you've got input, feedback you'd like to share with us, I'd encourage you to keep coming and sharing that. You came up with an idea for parking over at the park in Valley Junction. I thought it was a great idea. We ended up not being able to do it, but you really helped us think out of the box and consider another option. So if you have any feedback you want to come and give us on various projects, we'd love to hear from you. So, all right. Thank you. Any other discussion from the council or anybody else in the audience like to discuss this with the council, or anybody online that wants to hit *6 to unmute? Assuming people are still on.
I would like to make a comment.
Sure. Can you just give us your name and address?
Sure, it's Ralph Haskins, 729
Oh.
5th Street. And to kind of go along with what you indicated, Mr. Mayor, and as well as Renee, I think first of all, the design guidelines were approved unanimously by the group, which I found to be quite amazing. And they fully support the guidelines. And I would tell you that I am under the impression that there are 2 more components to it that we're working on. The guidelines are the first thing, and then in addition to that, you would have some type of historical document further preserving some of the buildings and the stuff that's going on down there. And then the third component of it is zoning. And so the guidelines are going to kind of guide us through those other things. But the intent is it'll be easy for the staff to be able to make a decision in regards to what the intent is for those buildings without any additional input from a committee, because we'll have done our work in a manner that's consistent with being able to allow them to make the decisions. So I just wanted to point that out. I think, at least from my perspective, can't speak for all the members of the implementation committee, but I think this is just phase 1. And that's the design guidelines, which, by the way, were extremely well done and well thought out, and included, I think, over 6 100 public comments. So I just wanted to share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph. Anybody else online? Star 6 to unmute. Okay, anybody else on the council dais? Any other discussions? Okay, sorry,
Yep,
go ahead.
Sorry,
Matt.
Mayor. I just want to say, Councilwoman Hardman and Councilman Trevelyan, and a lot of folks in the room have spent a lot of time on these guidelines. And I know we were in a difficult spot about a year ago because we didn't have a standard which we could point to. And I'm very excited that we're getting to the process of a standard we can all point to. And we can all know what to expect and what not to expect. And I look forward to taking these guidelines, putting them, as you kind of described it, codifying them, or however we do that, so that they do have the force and effect of law. And we can ensure that on a go-forward basis, everything down there will comply with all the good work and the input folks have had over the last 10 months or so. So thank you to everybody for their work on this project. I know there was a lot that went into it.
Absolutely. I echo everything you said. A lot of people put a lot of time in on this. Renee, Kevin, and everybody on the committee, and people not on the committee, people that showed up to give their input, and it's been just a great process, so.
Yeah, not much to add from what Councilman McKenney just said, but just looking through the entire the document, the amount of work that was put into it is greatly appreciated. It's amazing that, and as Ralph just said on the phone, that it was unanimous. These guidelines are really going to help us move forward, and I look forward to kind of doing something to make sure they're beyond just guidelines too. So, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Anybody else? Any other discussion?
If I could just add one
Sure,
more comment.
absolutely.
I think when when we spend as much time here in these meetings, maybe we'll, and we're going to have a vote in a moment or two, but I would be remiss if I did not thank the chairs of this committee. Mo and Nate were both chairs of this committee, and I know we still have work to do, but to be at this point where we are approving some guidelines, there has been a lot of heavy lifting. There's been a lot of stressful nights, I'm sure, but there's been some nights at which you've gone away and felt like we've made progress. So I just would be totally remiss without thanking Mo, and I know you had a co-chair, Nate, in helping us get to this point today. And my heart goes out to Tessa Associates. They have been an absolute phenomenal consultant in this process.
Agreed.
We cannot have had a better consultant that did so much heavy lifting. No matter what you said, he just smoothed things over, okay? Or at least listened. And so I want to say, this was my first time with you as a consultant on this project, and my hat goes off to you and your team. And then lastly, no matter what happens tonight, there are staff behind the scenes that have spent hours and hours and hours in getting us to this point, in addition to what they've normally done. And we can say, yep, we pay them to do that. But I'm going to say to Clyde and Brad and Christine, thank you. Thank you for some of the heavy lifting. Thank you for being there and giving up time in your family's life and getting us through this. No, it was not a perfect process, but yet it was a process. And that we should be proud that we're at least at this point where we are in a much better spot than we were 8-9 months ago. So my heart is really filled tonight with where we started and where I hope that we'll end tonight with more work to do, but process from 8 or 9 months ago. From a person that has been at the meetings, listening to the dialogue, hearing your passion, hearing your tears, hearing your frustration, hearing your joys. We ought to be proud tonight.
Thank you, Renee. Great tribute to staff and Tesca and everybody else, the chairs, and staff has really put a lot of time into this, and we just can't thank you guys enough. So, all right, any other discussion before we vote? Okay, hearing none, please vote.
5 yes.
Let's give it up.
This is the most clapping we've ever had in a city council meeting in my 12 years, so. All right, item 7E, resolution establishing a public hearing regarding the FY23 operating capital budget. At this time, we've got a resolution establishing the public hearing and ordering the clerk to publish the notice of said hearing. Can I get a motion?
Motion.
Okay,
Second.
any discussion? Okay, anybody from the audience or online? All right, please vote.
5 yes.
Okay, item 7F, Amendment to City Code, amend Title 4, Health and Safety Regulations, Chapter 4, Nuisances, Section 2, Nuisances Declared, Subsection A, Weeds, to clarify the maximum height for weeds or vegetation. We have got an ordinance for approval, the first reading. We got no outstanding issues, and this came through community compliance on February 7th with unanimous recommendation.
Move for consideration of the first reading.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, well, we got audience comment here. Go ahead, please give us your name and address again, even though we know who you are.
Yeah. I'm Jim Hogue, 2nd Street. So looking at the packet, it says, so it's the city staff want to remove the part of the ordinance that says that height on average to make it easier to enforce. I would actually argue that it should be a little bit hard to enforce. Right? We don't want to end up in a scenario where a petty neighbor complains because one particular weed is longer than 10 inches, and then city staff have to come out and be like, yep, that one's longer, we got to send a letter. And then a month later, we fine you because another weed popped up or whatever, right? Like, we don't, if people want to live under like the tyranny of an HOA, more power to them, but we shouldn't be doing that citywide. Yes, sometimes yards get a little unkempt, and that's okay. Like, that's, if there's a safety issue, right? Like if things are so overgrown you can't walk on the sidewalk or drive through the alley or see around a corner, yes, that's something we should deal with, right? If there's a brush pile that's just waiting to be lit up and burned down the neighborhood, yes, we should deal with that. But some unkempt grass, some unmowed grass, like that, frankly, that should be beneath the city. That's too petty, in my opinion. So I would suggest keeping the on average, or maybe even actually just straight up removing that part of the city code entirely. But
Yeah, I appreciate your comments. I think, this is something that we're doing because we've heard complaints when we've gone out to enforce this and have tried to prove that the grass is higher than 10 inches on average, and somebody says, no, take a look at this spot, it's 9. So I hear everything you're saying. I don't know if we've got.
I'll add one more
Doug,
comment because I'm the chair of this
Yeah,
this
go ahead,
committee,
Doug.
right? And like all things, it's the few who ruin it for everybody else. And so this actually aligns our code with what is very, I guess, more common across the metro area. And so I think that this is a good change. I understand what you're talking about, though. I'm very sensitive to it myself, but Kevin and I are on that committee together, and I think we talked through the same thing that you talked about, and we decided this was the right thing to do. So I support this amendment of this ordinance and continue to do so. Thank you.
Yeah, and I've been on the code enforcement subcommittee for the entire 12 years I've been on the council. And this is something that we deal with on a regular basis, is weeds and junk and debris and whatnot. So if you talked about, taking it clear out of the code, that's nowhere near an option. And all this did was remove the on the average.
right.
So it's not really changing that much from what we already had. So yeah, I fully support this. I know there's areas in my neighborhood that you've got people that they'll have the grass growing long up around the house, And I'm talking, 5, 6 feet out from the house, and the rest of the yard's mowed. And it's like, almost like they're playing the game because they know it's on average, and see, the average is within code, so you can't touch that. And it's like Doug said, it's a few, ruin it for everybody. So,
So,
yeah, but I appreciate your comments. And
in my own personal self-interest, I have some prairie grass in my backyard that I do occasionally get letters from the city about. So I'm also very sensitive to this issue because it's like, we live in a tall grass prairie state. I do like to have my prairie grass. But
all right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, appreciate it. Anybody else like to comment on this? Either council or anybody in the audience or online? Okay. Hearing none, please vote.
Five yes, an ordinance amending the city code of the city of West Des Moines, Iowa, 2019 by amending Title IV Health and Safety Regulations, Chapter 4 Nuisances, Section 2 Nuisances declared, subsection A Weeds, to clarify the maximum height for weeds or vegetation.
Move for approval of the first reading.
Okay, who seconded that? We have
Second.
discussion. Okay. Any other further discussion? Hearing none, please vote.
Five yes.
Okay, item 7G, we've got a request from the Historic West Des Moines Master Plan Steering Committee for enactment of a demolition moratorium, city initiated, and what we've got here for a motion is provide direction to staff. I would suggest a few things here. Number one, I would direct staff to set up a special city council meeting between now and March 1st. To provide a public hearing to extend the moratorium specific to demolition for the Valley Junction mixed-use area as voted on unanimously by the committee, with exception of the properties that have been previously excluded from the current moratorium, which I believe is at 111 Fifth, and maybe there's another address to that building,
113
Fifth. Number two, I would ask the Finance Administration Subcommittee, I'd ask that we with feedback and input from the residents and business owners, to explore additional buildings in this area outside of the 53 that have already been identified by the previous historian that we hired, to determine whether or not some of those other buildings may be historic properties or contributing properties. Finance Administration, with input from others, essentially need to narrow the scope of work to be done. And then I'd say three, after that, the scope of the work is defined, that we look to do an RFP to hire a historian to determine what buildings, in addition to the 53 that we've already identified, again, could qualify. And last, I would also ask that as part of their work, that F&A take a look, relook and rework our incentives in this area to provide incentives that encourage rehabilitation, that discourage tear down of non-contributing properties, and that deter tear down of contributing properties. So that is what I would put forward. I don't know if anybody would make that motion. I cannot make any motion as the mayor.
I would move that the concepts you just outlined, Mayor.
Okay, is there a second?
I would second those as well.
Okay, is there any discussion on this?
Mr. Mayor, the only question I have, was your first thing that it has to be done by the end of
Well,
February?
what we're doing tonight, my understanding is what we're doing tonight, we can't extend the moratorium tonight. We've got to, because it requires a public hearing.
Okay.
So what my direction would be is to staff to set up a special city council meeting between now and March 1st so that we can extend that moratorium, that 6 months, before March 1st.
I was just concerned about notice times to be able to make that
I
happen.
think you're going
Well,
to be able to do
none of the previous moratoriums or extensions were done by public hearing.
Okay, I was told that we required a public hearing to do it. If we don't need a public hearing, we don't need a public hearing.
I don't believe, we didn't previously, so.
Okay,
No.
okay.
Okay, then that's.
Legal
that's-
counsel? Okay, so I guess I would just, instead of direct staff to set up a public hearing, which I thought needed to be done, I would simply just say we need this, we extend the moratorium 6 months as as recommended by the committee, and everything else still stays in place. We have F&A with input from citizens, take a look at narrowing the scope of work to define what buildings outside of the 53 that have already been determined. I refer to that as the RSTLNE from Wheel of Fortune. We're giving you that. But what other buildings would potentially qualify, okay? And then once that scope of work is narrowed, I think we need to look at doing an RFP to hire somebody like we did in the past to go out and take a look at these buildings and make a determination as to whether or not these are historic or contributing properties. And again, ask them to look at the incentives that we have and realign those to put forth incentives to rehab rather than tear down and to deter from tearing down even non-contributing. So.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
the work done by, I believe his name was Jim Jacobson.
Yep.
I think there's a lot of information in that. I think it's 140 pages or something like that document that lists a lot of what you just talked about.
Right.
That this is not a contributing building based on X, or, this is the history of this building. So I think a lot of that work has already been done. It just needs to be the report pulled off the shelf and looked through. And I think that was what some of the people on the committee were on their own, kind of a subcommittee type of a thing, willing to look into it and see what can be done. I don't know if we need to spend, tens of thousands of dollars to do this. I think a lot of the work has already been done.
Well, if that's the case, that's music to my ears because, I think we were planning on spending the money we needed to, but.
Right.
Now, when's the right time to comment, I guess?
Well, I guess, real quick, Kevin, I guess my question to you is, my understanding is that the 53 that have already been identified, I think those are good to go, right? But I thought there was, people wanted to take a look at some of the
Absolutely,
others.
there's more, and that's what he talks about in this report.
Yeah.
But
So-
that's what they want to do is talk with longtime business owners, longtime property owners, longtime residents of West Des Moines that can say that building was X. And there's a fire map out there. I know I'm going to get the Sanborn, I think it is.
Yeah.
Fire map from 1937 that lists a lot of this information as well, that research is obtainable.
Right.
And I think that's why the committee was looking for 6 months on this, so that a lot of this work can get done well before that.
Sure. Now, I will say, the way I'm envisioning this is that we get input and feedback from citizens. We do have some of the research done, buildings they'd like to have looked at to try to narrow the scope. But I do think that we need to hire somebody that specializes in this, that has standards that they adhere to, much like what was done in the past with the 53 buildings. They can take into account, stories that people have of what this building was used for, but they need to look into that, and that we still need to have those standards.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. Just want to make sure.
Absolutely.
Doug and then Renee.
So I think, I'm sort of an unbiased third party in all this, with the exception of that, my taxpayers are financing some of this work. I do think it's important. I love Valley Junction. I'm down there at least twice a week, eating lunch, whatever. I have an office at 801 Ashworth. I think, and the talk of the consultant, while I don't necessarily like spending the money, I think it would be wise to hire that person because they can be an independent third-party arbiter and can prepare a report, and they can take into account, Councilman Trevilian, the things you're talking about. I would support that rather than trying to get a freebie from somebody. A part of what I see sometimes is I know a lot of time's been invested by staff, by council folks themselves, and I think this independent third party could gather that information and provide an unbiased report back. Because what I don't want to have happen either is after 6 months, now we got to do another moratorium. Because that just burns more capital, and that's my taxpayers' money. And so that's where I come in and think, I'll support this the first time. I don't know I can support it indefinitely.
Yeah, I appreciate those comments, and I agree with you. That's why time's going to be of the essence to have this meeting, get feedback from the neighbors on buildings they'd like to have looked at, and why we got to get somebody hired like pretty quickly. Because I'd imagine, depending on how many extra buildings it ends up becoming, it could take a little while. So,
Well, and that's why we need to time box it.
Yep.
6 months.
yep, I hear you. I agree. Appreciate your comments. Renee?
Yes, I would like to add to the discussion in terms of my support of the 6-month demolition moratorium. I asked at the steering committee, what is it that we are going to get done in 6 months? And so I'm approving this because we're going to make progress in 6 months. Hopefully that is the case. I am approving it with the hopes that there is a professional consultant that has been hired that can do the work. While I know that there are people that have a lot of historical information, but I'm learning, and I've done some reading off-site of these committees, that because a building is old doesn't mean it's historic. So there are a lot of other things that go into that. So I would like the plan augmented to make sure that there is, and again, we're investing in this effort, putting our money where our mouth is, because I think it'll be good money well spent to be able to have it done by folks that are trained to do that kind of work, have done it in other communities, and know what goes into it before something is listed as contributing or truly historic or historical. So I wanted to get that out there, that I'm supporting the 6-month with the caveat that we employ outside professional resources that help us do the work of identification.
Agreed. Thank you for your comments. Matt?
Yep, I'd just add that, this area is, I think everybody that was involved in that committee knows very well, the Department of Interior standards and other criteria go into some of these classifications. And I think it is important to ensure that whatever the work product is at the end of it, it's informed by folks that, have some local perspective, right? So that's why it's important to get, residents' input and community input, but also the perspective of some of these historic standards. What does it mean from a, historic designation under the Department of Interior standards, which is part of what I understand was used to come up with these guidelines. And so I think also with respect to kind of the concept you shared, Mayor, and what we're moving is, this expert can also help us understand maybe some of the criteria we may want to consider for purposes of what you referenced to F&A in terms of incentives. What sort of structures can we put in place to deter certain conduct, encourage other conduct? Somebody that's been in this space and it has these sorts of engagements on a regular basis might be able to provide us some really unique insight on how we can ensure that we're doing what we can to protect the area.
I agree with you. Go ahead, Greg.
Yeah, and kind of to reinforce some stuff that I said earlier tonight when I was giving the F&A report, some of those guidelines that you were kind of mentioning, Matt, have been tightened up because we have all these different, regulatory compliance fund, property improvement fund, and the upper story housing program. So we've adopted some new guidelines this very evening that prevent demolitions for when it comes to upper story housing. We have created the idea that if you want to renovate your roof, and that itself is encouraging renovation rather than demo. And so we are already focusing on stabilizing existing properties. However, I think there is way more work to be done in probably a couple of different subcommittees, but for finance administration specifically, I know Councilman Lotz and I, we can have a good, robust discussion about what does it mean for incentives that the city can offer to help preserve historic Valley Junction that really, really encourage renovations rather than demolitions, because I think a lot of the passion about this project came from demolitions in the first place. And if we as a city can encourage renovations, because you go down Fifth Street, the 100, 200 block, and you just look around, and you can feel the history. And if you tore something down, it would be different. So if we can encourage renovations, yes, and there are a lot of opportunities to do exactly that. And so looking forward to hearing more about those opportunities and hearing more from everybody in the audience and out in the community about, well, these opportunities too.
Your Honor, when we reconvened or got this master plan steering committee underway, I recommended, since we were going to use a consultant, that we utilize Tesca because they were the ones that worked on it 5 years ago.
Right.
To expand on that, I would suggest that we use Mr. Jacobson, since he's already done a 145-page study on this and he's very familiar with that area. I think he can get us running faster than trying to reinvent the wheel.
I don't disagree with you. Just, I don't know, as far as this is a professional service that we're asking to be done, so we don't need to essentially do an RFP or.
We didn't with
right?
Tesca. We
Okay.
just, I
Okay.
mean, I guess we did, but it was
I
pretty
don't
much
have-
tailored to them.
Yeah, I don't have any problem with that, and I
So-
think that, it might help expedite things. I don't know what everybody else agrees with, but, yeah, a great suggestion,
I would be
Kevin.
comfortable, increase efficiencies, try to hit our target in terms of the 6 months more quickly. That makes sense.
Yes, thank you.
No, I think if it allows us to hit the 6-month timeline, I would support that. I don't know Mr. Jacobson or the work that was done. I'm too new here, but
I don't think many of us do, actually, to be honest.
but if it helps hit the 6-month and we can get this thing finalized, I'm in favor of that because I think we need to. So
I
Agree.
can't, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I can't speak to his qualifications. I do know the work he did was submitted to the state SHPO office, and it was, I think, highly regarded. And the same thing with the Department of the Interior at the national level. His work from previous, review in Valley Junction was also acknowledged as being very thorough at that level. So, I mean, from that perspective, it sounds like he'd be a very good fit. Whether he's still in the business doing this, I obviously don't know.
Yeah,
Believe
that's
he
what we
is.
don't know. Okay. I think that's a great suggestion, Kevin.
Thank you.
That makes a lot of sense. So, any other discussion on the council dais before we open it up to the audience, both online and in the chamber? All right, MJ, come on up. Give us your name and address again.
All right, MJ Hogue, 2nd Street. I'm probably going to bat 0 for 3 here, but I'll throw this out here. I would suggest also including the 500 block of his street in that demolition moratorium, solely because right now it's in a weird state. It's not covered by the design guidelines because those only go up to the 400 block, and zoning changes haven't been made to make it in the transitional zone or whatever might come out of the committee. So it's still under Valley Junction Commercial. So it's in a weird state right now. So just to protect it from changes that people will be might be up in arms about, I would suggest including that.
I don't have, I don't have any objection necessarily to that other than the fact that what we're trying to do is just adopt what the committee passed unanimously. So I would hesitate to include that just for that reason.
Yeah,
that was not part
I'm
of
guessing
it.
people just didn't think about that is all, but.
Okay.
I think it makes sense, personally.
Okay. Everybody else okay with including it? I wish that, go ahead.
are we just canceling out the committee's recommendation then?
No, he's looking to amend it a little bit. I don't, the tough thing here is that we don't have the benefit of the committee members. I mean, we've got the committee chair here. I don't know if the committee chair would want to be put on the hot seat and come up and maybe respond to this request. And MJ, I just hesitate to amend something that,
I don't think we can.
Keep
committee
in
made
mind
a
it's an
recommend-
advisory board only, so we can make.
we can change
changes to
that,
it.
but in good faith, we're trying to keep it as consistent as possible.
Right.
So if we could just have Meredith respond.
Good evening, Meredith Wells, Chair of the Steering Committee. Yes, we are advisory committee, so we make recommendations to council. So it is your decision what to do with that. So yes, we were going off of kind of the new zoning area. Based off of the old zone, the 500 block is kind of considered in that original moratorium. Since primarily it is residents that make up the 500 block, I think in good faith to include that in the area would be a good decision in order to do that. On behalf of my opinion on that, I think the rest of the committee would go along with that as well too.
Okay, appreciate your comments.
Well, Meredith, really quick. So there was a moment when that was included, but in this particular document, you chose, so there must have been a decision there. Could you tell me more about that to
Yeah,
take
absolutely.
away the 500 block?
Yes, so since the 500 block is primarily residential,
Yeah.
we wanted to kind of keep that look and feel more residential of that. There are a few commercial buildings in there. There's like an insurance agency, there's Mark Chris Home Design in there. There's a few in there, but they do have more of that residential characteristic in there. So instead of making that the mixed use commercial district, which has more of that commercial feel to it, if there were to be the transition zone implemented into that area, it would have to take on, if a business were to go into there, it would have to take on the character and the charm of a residential looking building. So that way it would blend more cohesively into the residential area. So that's why we decided to bump back the commercial district to Locust instead of going all the way up to 9.
Okay, so so that was a decision that you all made, but now you're saying that it's okay if you don't do that?
I think just for the moratorium, I think people would feel more comfortable of extending the moratorium up to 5th in order to ensure that the demo moratorium.
Because Greg, right now, somebody could buy one of those houses and bulldoze it and build a commercial property on it because it is zoned historic Valley Junction
Sure.
business.
I was just wondering about the specific
trying to-
moment
they're trying to claw
when
that
it
back.
was said,
Yeah.
let's take away that. And that's the specific moment I was wondering, because you did it for a reason, and so I'm most curious. I'm still a little unclear as to why, but
We're kind
that's
of in
fine.
that weird area right now. We've
Sure.
been kind of between the zones. So I think to help kind of bring our community together, I think this in a good faith
Okay.
would be
All
a
right.
good. kind of-
Let's real quick, if we could, let's go to Greta Truman, our legal counsel, who might rain on our parade a little bit here.
I am. This is where fun comes to die. The
Public,
legal department.
I believe that. Public notice, this wasn't publicly noticed, so including this might not give people a chance, or?
Yeah, I don't think we need a public hearing, but we do need proper notice, and
Gotcha.
we need to make certain findings. I wouldn't advise also enlarging the area without that type
Okay.
of procedure. So I think it would be best to just direct for it to staff, as you initially said.
All right, let's just leave the area right now. If we want to amend this in the future, if we find this necessary, we'll bring it back.
6 months.
6 months.
I can't support more capital being spent on that
Gotcha.
after that.
Nope,
My
I know.
taxpayers.
I hear you loud and clear, my friend. Loud and clear. Okay. Anybody else in the audience, come on up to the podium, give us your name and address, and then people online that are wishing to speak, we will get to you as soon as we can.
Tim Bratvold, 135th Street. Just trying to gain clarity around what's being proposed from the timing standpoint of the incentives, and then the discussion around what is historic versus what is not. Are those going to be run in a parallel path, or are those two separate paths?
I would envision these being run in a parallel path. You know, everybody wants to do what we can to preserve the historic nature of Valley Junction. Right now, we've got some incentives, as Councilman Hudson mentioned. We've changed tonight the scoring criteria for the Property Improvement Fund and the Regulatory Compliance Fund to put more of an emphasis on rehabilitation, and that's the scoring. But we also have incentives, additional incentives like the property tax rebate program down there that provides 5-year 100% rebate on the incremental value of the improvements that are done. You know, I think with the design guidelines that we have in place and with the cost of rehab, it probably would make sense to have the committee take a look at that and determine if we could provide a greater incentive maybe to incentivize people to do more rehab and not as much tear down. And then I think they need to take a look at these historic contributing properties and determine, do we have any incentives on that at all?
Right.
So,
Yeah,
anyway.
and to just build on that is, we're entering kind of the peak construction timeframe of
Totally hear you.
the year. And so when we get to September and then roll out the incentives, then that consists of planning, getting through
Right.
city approvals. So if there would be any opportunity to perhaps move quicker on the
Yep.
incentive process to incentivize others to move quicker on rehabbing properties down in Valley Junction.
Yep, I think that's the easier part of this. So, you know, F&A with Councilman Hudson as the chair and Councilman Lotes on there, they'll have their work cut out for them, but, you know, I think, personally, I think that's probably the easier of the two tasks, and the, you know, getting the input and feedback from the residents and determining which buildings are historic or could be historic, and kind of narrowing down the focus is probably going to take a little bit longer.
But also, just to be clear, this moratorium is just for demolition.
Just for demolition.
So any sort of renovations, any sort of incentives, all of those things are completely on the table unless it's for a demolition.
Sure, and as a property owner, I would want to sit tight until I truly understand what the incentives are out there to hopefully do what's appropriate. 135th Street is a non-contributing building. I would like to do something that would contribute to Valley Junction. And if this program could help do that, I would like to move forward with that. But waiting 6 months is just quite a ways to wait to figure out if that makes sense or not.
Yep, I hear you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, and it's not
Thank
going
you
to
for
be
your
6
comments.
months to get the funding, because that's going to take effect.
It's already in place too.
Right, right.
Well,
the
the money's not there.
Well, the funding for Property Improvement Fund and for the Regulatory Compliance Fund, we don't have that in this current budget. But, you know, looking at the property tax rebate program and what we do there, whether we change that 5-year 100% to something greater for rehabs or whatever the committee decides, that's something that could be done relatively quickly, assuming that the rest of the council agree with the recommendation that they bring forward. So, and I think what you're saying is let's get moving on that as quickly as possible, so you can make a decision based on finances and whatnot. As to
Update those specifics
what
for
you're gonna
you.
do.
Yep, of course. Thank you.
Yep. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else in the chamber before we go online? Okay, come on up. Give us your name and address, please.
Kevin Goodlaxon, 304 2nd Street. And when I hear incentives, one thing you might consider is to reach out to Mid-American Energy. TPO roofs is a membrane. It's a white Energy Star product. Also, PVC is an Energy Star product. And you might find that Mid-American Energy will help with incentives, kind of pitch in. It's just something to investigate.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I really appreciate that, because we are in the process of working on some housing programs that we're going to be running down there, and somebody suggested the same thing for the housing program, see if Mid-American Energy would be willing to work with us on something there.
And those roofs come together as a package. There's the insulation and then the membrane. There's a lot of black EPDM down there.
Okay.
EPDM is the rubber sheet, and there's new products out there.
All right, thank you so much, really appreciate that suggestion. Okay, anybody else? Come on up, Steve.
Steve Freevert, Executive Director of the Historic Valley Junction Foundation. Just real briefly, we're a Main Street organization. We are founded on historic preservation. I'm a preservationist. I love this. One of the issues that we've dealt with, I think, is we're looking at least 4 different maps, maybe 5. So there's the existing National Register district, then there's the red zone, then there's the zoning map, and then there's the Main Street district, and then there's the whole neighborhood. Our Main Street district boundaries do go up to Vine, so I, personally think that's great to just look at that holistically. One minor caution is, and Jim Jacobson does great work. I have no idea how busy he might be. It's possible that he's 6 months out on jobs. I know architectural historians are really busy right now, so just putting that out there, that may end up being an issue.
Sure. Well, we'll see if we can get him. I appreciate your
That with a phone
comments.
call
Steve.
tomorrow.
Yep, Kevin's calling tomorrow. So we'll see if we can get him, and if not, then, we'll look at doing a potential RFP for that then, see who we can get, so. All right, anybody else from the audience that would like to comment on this item before we go online? All right, seeing nobody coming forward. Anybody online, please hit *6 to unmute yourself. Again, not #6, but *6, and give us your name and address. Wow, we may have, either we're having technical difficulties or we talked this to death. I'm starting to think maybe the latter.
That's the latter.
All right, go ahead, name and address, please.
Ralph Atkins from 729 Fifth Street.
All right.
I gotta tell you, listen to this remote, that you get a lot of stuff done, and you hit on a lot of stuff. I'm just like, whoa, the number of topics that you touched on are incredible. But just a few points. One, you know, when you initially, Mr. Mayor, you wanted to see some things happen by March 1st. And so, and a lot of people came to the committee and expressed a desire to not hold back existing landowners, property owners from being able to do work on their houses or their buildings, I mean. And so that's really sort of the nice thing is you're able to fuel the opportunity for people that want to do something to be able to do something because now they have the guidelines. And then the other element is the future guidelines to be taken into consideration with any construction potentially. I have a different opinion. I just want to express it, and then part of it too, and also what Steve had said too. Our consultants person that is familiar with historical renovation and historical registration and all that kind of stuff said it could take a matter of years to be able to pull that off, and plus you have to work around the deadlines of individuals that are experienced in that. So March would not be, or even 6 months from now, it doesn't sound like it's viable from the perspective of what our consultant said in regards to that. My view of this is that we look at it from a geographic perspective in terms of defining that area. That's what I like about why the zone, that red zone, or whatever you want to call it, is set up as such. And I would think that, you know, we could look at working within those guidelines from the historical perspective, that additional document, that second document, that could help us define things. And again, I go back to one that really resonated with me, and that was a few months back, the Neighborhood Association had the VFW in, and they talked about the history of their organization and their building. And then it indicated at our last meeting, that's a non-conforming building. So would we want to allow that building to be torn down or not? And a lot of people, I think, were of the opinion, no. We feel that that's part of the historic Valley Junction. So in reality, if we were to define an area and then set some guidelines, we can do that without having to address every single building and be able to do it in a timely way so we can get things going and then work long term. And Meredith and Steve could address this, but I had a sense from the consultant that that would be a future thing that we could certainly consider, but it's not something that can be done in a timely manner because it takes time. And so Meredith maybe can address that, or Steve can address that for you. But the whole idea of the process, we want to keep things moving as a committee and progressing, and we don't want to disenfranchise anybody. So these design guidelines are there now for the existing property owners, and then for people considering building. And again, I think there are a lot of people that are of the opinion that there are a number of buildings down there that are considered non-conforming, that would be non-conforming in the future, but that would represent some value to us. And so we define what's important to us, define what's of value to us from a historical perspective. So thank you for allowing me to comment. I
Appreciate all your comments, Ralph. You know, I think like you said, I envisioned this, the scope of work being narrowed with the help of residents and staff and others, so that we don't have to do every single building. There are certain buildings there that I think residents would say, hey, I believe this to be historic for various reasons. Either, you know, it was involved in railroad operations or what have you. Again, going back to Councilwoman Hardman's comments, it's got to be more than I was here with my grandfather back in 1955. We used to come into this gas station and get a pop. I mean, that, you know, just because it's old and you got some memories may not mean that it qualifies as a historic building. But I think we could probably narrow the scope, like you said, Ralph, and try to expedite the process a little bit there. So that's my sincere hope on that. Anybody else online? Star 6 to unmute. Okay. Hearing none, I just want to make sure that we know exactly where we're going here, what direction we're moving. We don't have to do the public hearing. We established that. Tonight, we are going to be extending this moratorium for the way that the committee voted on it in the Valley Junction mixed-use area specific to demolition. And with the exception of the properties that have been previously excluded from the moratorium, which is 111 Fifth, 113 Fifth, we're going to send this issue to Finance and Administration, who are going to, with feedback and input from the residents and business owners, to explore additional buildings in the area outside of the 53 that have already been done by Jacobson that may also be historic properties, to narrow the scope of the work. And then after the scope of the work is defined, as quickly as possible to make sure this moratorium does not run past 6 months, we are either going to reach out, Kevin's going to reach out to Jacobson, this is not part of the motion, but to try to get Jacobson to do this, to expedite things. If not, we will put this out to an RFP. And last but not least, simultaneously, we are going to be looking at incentives and doing what we can on incentives to realign the incentives with preserving our history and providing maybe potentially greater incentives for those that do rehab over tear down, and also to try to deter tear downs for contributing properties. That is what is contained in this motion and the second. That is the scope of the work as we move forward. Any questions or comments before we vote?
Mr. Mayor, thank you for being very, very specific with your, because there's a lot of moving pieces, but thank you for being very, very clear and very, very specific with what we are voting on this very, very evening. So thank you for that.
Russ, when you talked about contributing buildings, are you talking about after this further study is done to determine what is determined a historic building? Because the contributing buildings based on National Registry is a different piece than what would be historic to maybe West Des Moines specifically, that's not necessarily a contributing building.
I think what needs to be looked at is historic, either historic or contributing. Now, I don't know the difference between them both, but I think look at them both, again, with standards in place that a historian can use to determine whether or not it's contributing or historic, and defining them as such. Again, not looking at those 53 that have already been determined, and then move forward with that and make that determination.
Thank you for clarification.
So, yep. All right. With no other further comments, please vote. Motion was made by Councilman McKinney and seconded by Councilman Lotz.
5 yes.
Yes, the mayor cannot make any motions and can't vote.
Oh, one last comment about that to make it clear. Meredith, we were having a good conversation. I appreciate your answers. I wasn't asking because I was opposed to extending that up to Vine Street. I was just more curious about that. So thank you for providing some more context.
Yes,
so thank you.
Thank you. Okay, item 8A, receive, file, and refer. We are going to receive and file the 2022 West Des Moines Waterworks budget amendment. Item 9, other matters. We do have legislative updates, and Jamie is waiting here. The other thing I would say, just under other items, because I keep forgetting to do it under my report, my mayor's report, is that I do want to mention, and I may not get this exactly right, but it's a thought that counts. I don't know, a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago even, there was a publication that came out that mentioned that somebody that we all know is honored as top 5 most influential people in the metro, and this certain someone's nonprofit was the top 3 most influential in the metro. So I just want to take a moment to recognize and celebrate one of our own, Councilwoman Renee Hardman. If we could get some applause for her. And with that, feel free to leave. We've got legislative update with. Good.
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate that. So
absolutely, well deserved.
That's right.
Well deserved.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Hey, we have some scouts here, and I just always like to say hi because it's always great to to see you at City Hall. So just welcome. It's great to have you here, and I hope it wasn't too boring for you. But
He's hitting his dad like, Dad, I'm never doing this again. Hopefully
thank you for coming tonight,
I'm getting
though.
that badge and I'm never coming back.
In a few years, you can have Greg's seat.
Yeah, there you go.
Like, I think I earned my Eagle Scout badge today.
Oh, man. Holy cow. All right. Jamie, go ahead.
February 18th was the first legislative funnel. Yeah, busy week.
I was unaware of that. I staff
Wasn't aware
appropriations.
of it, yeah. Because he probably didn't sleep, because there were, the process is intended to narrow focus. My apologies, Jamie Letzering, Deputy City Manager. The process is intended to narrow focus, to give you a perspective on the volume of bills that we've been through in the last 2 weeks. There are 184 bills that went through, yeah, Matt's face says it all, I think. 184 bills that came through committee last week. The governor signed 182 last year total. So, the volume has been quite substantial, I will say. Floor debate will consume the next couple of weeks. We'll also expect negotiations on probably a final tax plan. Both the House and the Senate approved their tax plans. And now they'll attach those to each other and send them next door to one another. And then also, let's not forget, in the FY23 budget with REC will meet on, I believe, the 10th of March. So we can expect between March 10th and March 18th will be a very busy time, I imagine. Although, worth noting, those type of bills that come through Ways and Means or are relative to the budget are not subject to the funnel. So a few things that we're watching and keeping an eye on includes the governor's workforce bill, HSB 682, which has some restrictions on local zoning enforcement and also prohibits local building codes, creates a statewide building code. So local governments cannot raise or lower electrical, plumbing, fire safety, energy efficiency standards, things of that nature. So as you'd imagine, our fire chief, our fire marshal, very interested in what that means for health and safety issues. Let's see, Conduit facilities as an essential corporate purpose, HSB 621. This is not our bill. I actually don't know who is the sponsor or the impetus here, but it adds Conduit facilities as an essential corporate purpose. That came out of House, and we'll watch and see if that has a companion that can, or has a chance in Senate. One that Ryan and I have discussed and are kind of interested in seeing if this could quietly get anywhere would be Senate File 2279 for electronic bids. Clarifies that notice to bidders in Chapter 26 may be received in an electronic format. So that would be nice to get things up to date, and we'd still open in person here, but people could submit their bids electronically. Other than those top items, we'll really wait and see what happens. There's no activity today, not much activity on Friday. So now this week we'll continue to narrow and watch carefully some of those items that are debate eligible on both sides. And I'll take any questions.
Any questions for Jamie?
Thank you all.
I would just say thank you to you, Jamie, and our lobby team of Tim Coonan and Sydney Gangstad for all that they do. And I'd also thank our legislative team here on the council, which I believe consists of Kevin and Matt, if I'm correct. So appreciate everything that you guys are all doing, especially given the fact that I've got a conflict of interest myself and I cannot weigh in on those bills up at the Capitol. So
certainly, thanks
for all you guys are doing. Okay, and anything else? Okay, with that, we will adjourn into our workshop on solar arrays, solar energy. And the workshop, I believe, we're going to stay